There's the chat. There's the people. There's all the people. Wait, where's my camera? Holy crap. Holy crap. This is not supposed to happen. Let's see. If I quit this, and no, that's still not working. Let's see if this comes back on. This is me. I'm your EOS. There we are. Wait, let me just refocus this. Look how professional we are. Hey, everybody. How's it going, everybody? Look at all these people in chat. Man, I've missed the fuck out of you guys. I already just said fuck, and we just started the show. But man, I missed you guys. Good to see everybody. Really appreciate Rose777 throwing down some love in the chat. It's always good to see you. Nate, man, I missed you too. Nate, I got your text, and I didn't respond. And like, I was like, 4 days later, I was like, oh fuck, you didn't write Nate back. And then like 3 days later, I was like, dude, you didn't write Nate back. Both times I've been away from the ability to write. But also I was like, Nate has the energy to feel this, man. But it's still, anyway, it wasn't. Most of our lives have a lot more psychic communication than you think. Most of the times when you were working through an issue with someone in your head, at that point, right then at that moment, they are thinking of you too. The reason why you have that thought is the quantum entanglement that occurs because you met that person. When you meet someone, you quantumly entangle, you handshake, you memorize their IP address, so to speak. It's not something that you can't help it. And the reason why you can't help it is because the fiber of this world, the fiber, right, of this entire world that's weaving it together is entanglement. The tapestry, the wampum, right, the tiny seashells that are tied into this system. Oh, thanks, Dave or Dale. Allow us a glimpse at what this world is really about. And that's too much for most people. Most people are just like, dude, fuck that noise. I'm watching CNN. I am going back to the ways, right? And you start to realize why we actually have lies. That it's not that there is an evil overlord lying to you. I mean, there could be, but you're kind of have to become a subject. See, guys, the only way you can have an evil overlord is by being ruled by an evil overlord. That those two things are required. All right? That there is a symbiotic relationship. And you know that fish at the bottom of the ocean that has the light at the end? These creatures are on land. When I was in 8th grade, there was a girl named Tracy. Wow, she wore so much fucking eye makeup. And for Signal Mountain, I couldn't believe that she had the spunk to do that. The amount of black mascara was alluring to a 13-year-old, mystifying, and also inspiring at the same time, because you're seeing this kind of raw courage, which is funny because I would see that as courage when maybe she was, I'm getting way off topic. This thing, here's Tracy, and here's this guy named Robert. And in as little as 8th grade, when I was in 8th grade, they were in 10th grade, and I would walk to school, and they would skip school. And on my way to school, they would be hanging out on the porch. And I talked to everybody, especially on my way to school, because fuck, that place was boring. And this story was unfolded to me. Whenever Robert would go inside, Tracy would tell me this story of this evil overlord named Robert. And that she was being kept inside this princess tower, and that the dragon was so mean, and that she wants to get out, but she needs a prince to come save her. And me, being the brave 8th grade 13-year-old, I don't know how old I was. Anyway, was like, holy fuck, this is some good shit, man. Why go to school when we can attack, we can this monster, and there's a princess. And what I didn't know is that this princess has a tentacle that's attached to this face, this monster. Robert and Tracy were the same entity, and that they worked together, and that Robert and Tracy were symbiotic, and that they required a third party to complete their circuit, to complete this finishing field. And I fulfilled that role beautifully. Oh, God, just loved it. I was all about the whole John Hughes superhero guy, and Robert was all about, I'm going to kick your ass. And then Tracy was all about, oh my God, I love how watching two men fight over me. It was like this beautiful conglomerate. And at the early ripe age of 8th grade, I started to see, holy fuck, this world is not even close to what I was thinking it was initially. That there are these giant fish that are on the land, that they have these tentacles, and on the end of tentacles are mascara-burdened Tracies. These Zelda princesses that are all digital pixels. They're just pixels. And to burst that bubble would actually hurt Tracy, would destroy her entire thing going on. Same with Robert. Same with little Jimmy. That all three of these people were being fed from this illusion of overlord. In fact, the illusion of the overlord was so enticing that even people who didn't want the overlord were still buying the overlord, because there was a context that they could live in. And when you have a context to live in, you immediately feel safe. Why? Because the context is much like a hermit shell. It's a physical piece of crustaceanal keratin. Well, a shell wouldn't be keratin. Your nails would be keratin. What the fuck is a shell? Jesus, what a good question. Because a shell grows. Like, it freaking grows. But then other hermits move inside of it. Okay, we got to do a whole episode about shells. This framework, most of us don't get. Most of us are going to spend the rest of our lives basically just pummeling through and not really understand. And it's not that we don't understand because we're unable to, and this is the biggie. We don't understand because that context gives us shelter. We have shelter in that context. I read this morning, I wanted to pull this up, but I just didn't have time to put it down there. But I read this morning that as many as 3 out of 10 people doubt the story about our cosmology, doubt what we're told about the shape of the earth. And that's not necessarily really a flat earth or ball earth thing. That to doubt something is not to believe in something else. There's a very subtle middle ground. And these middle grounds actually is where most of the depth is kept. That between flat earth and ball earth, there's this beautiful soup of, I don't fucking know what's going on. That I don't know what this cosmology has for me. And rather than cling to a ladder, I'm going to swim in this soup a little bit. And that 20 to 30%, I need you guys to maybe take a bite off the idea that it's wrong to think that you are going to find what the right cosmology is, and then you're going to hold on to it and even sort of have like a crusade where unless other people believe that cosmology the same as you do, that tactic is ball earth technology. That is the concept of thinking in ball earth, that I've got it all figured out, and here's the truth. And here's the concept, here's the essence, here's what it is. And that is a context, the exact same way Tracy and Robert would hang out on their porch. And it was profitable. Because the truth is that those two people learn more about psychological feeding by not going to school. That they had a better fishing spot waiting for little guppies like me to walk by, waiting for the knight in shining armor parable to unfold. And that righteousness, that Zionism of sorts, is really why we have overlords. that if you didn't have a Zionistic person who's saying, the world is broken, I must make it better, that there's no way fucking overlord would ever work. That it is the overlord, it is I need to think of the name of that fish. It's not a monkfish. Anyway, that the overlord isn't this, it's this and this. And that all we do is react to the last overlord. That our decisions that we're making on a worldwide politic, even on a personal psychological level, even your decisions, my friends, even mine, I'm not above this, the decisions we make are simply reactions to a poor decision that was made last time. And that you and I might think that we are making progress organically, and because we are, this is what makes it so confusing. We actually are making this progress organically, but that it becomes impossible, mainly because of how uncomfortable it is to slowly realize that your reaction to a reaction is very, very predictable. That you are more obvious to anyone who's seeing. That the decisions that you make are mostly reactions to poor decisions of the past. And those poor decisions could be yours, or they could be someone else's. They could be a government, they could be a corporation, they could be a friends, they could be a clique, right? A following that you find solstice, that you find context inside of. And that these reactions to the reactions to the reactions is probably more closer to where most of our conscious thought is, including all of it. That your conscious thought, your waking conscious thought, is so immersed in a reaction of a reaction of a reaction from a reaction that it's simply too many facets in the hall of mirrors to even expect it to be able to get through. But we have this blind idea that the one who runs the fastest through the hall of mirrors is the one who knows what they're doing. And in a way, we need that to survive, because with courage requires a sort of blind ignorance. Those two kind of come together. So too does having nothing to lose, that these are all the same torque. That this motivation is helping us on a larger artificial intelligence spectrum, which is, that's got to be scary. It's got to be scary to a lot of you to hear that. But if you studied the principles of artificial intelligence, and when I say principles, they're really simple. I'm just talking about how AI actually trains itself. And I would imagine most of you haven't. I don't think you should. You'll find that it's artificial intelligence never actually learns. Artificial intelligence regurgitates until someone stops correcting it. Do you see the difference? Now, most of the learning that we go through in school is the same. You will regurgitate until we stop correcting you. And that your job as a learner, as an artificial intelligence in that system, is what I'm trying to say, is one where you are seeking the avoidance of pain. And that even good grades are the avoidance of pain. That well, I went to Cornell, therefore I should be in charge of Dr. Fauci and all the things you people know because I went to Cornell, that kind of shit. Where that is an avoidance of pain. That the accolades of that is really just a glittery version of the avoidance of pain. Because at the very young age, it was always about you will not advance, you will be retarded if you do not regurgitate in the proper way. And that's literally how artificial intelligence works. That when you are training an engine to recognize boats or traffic lights or cars in a myriad of images, that from the beginning to the end of that training, the AI never understands what a car is, how it works, what a traffic light is, what its purpose is, what its meaning is in life. None of those are important. It's simply slapped or not slapped. That the AI runs around the track, and every time it makes a loop, it's either told it succeeded or it failed. And that the AI over billions of iterations will simply learn to succeed purely from the strife of failure. And that at the end, you have a successful AI that can recognize cars 99.99999% of the time. And that society itself calls that wisdom. We call all of that wisdom. And on paper, it looks like wisdom because you give it a Mensa test. You give it an SAT. You give it these tasks, and it performs them as a highly trained, regurgitated machine would. And it's literally in the name, artificial intelligence. And our society is not built on wisdom. It's built on the artificication of intelligence. And that you will be measured on your ability to run around this lap, to run the loops, and not be punished as much as your peers. And I'm not even here to say that's a bad system. Because if you want to look at this world as a shepherd with sheep, if you want to look at all the people as sheep in need of a shepherd, this system is perfect. This system is absolutely optimal to achieve its goals. And whether or not evolution of you personally, spiritually, is a goal actually doesn't even matter. Because if you follow it as a side effect of what's happening, the end result is the same. And you end up with a look on life that is utilitarian, not intrinsic. It's a very, very, very important difference. And most of us aren't comfortable seeing the world as utilitarian because of how dangerous we've been told it is to think for yourself. Utilitarian, the meaning is in the word, utility. It's a kind of philosophy that with American philosophy, we talked about this in some episodes back. If you want to look more into it, look up like Emerson, Whitman. I bet those are in the descriptions. But these episodes where we were outlining the actual ideals of American philosophy, and you'll notice in those that I was presenting Thoreau and Whitman as the American philosophers. This was not a Descartesian kind of systematic scientific analysis of thought, that it was the poetry of these words that open the gates, open the petals to a new kind of thinking, this utilitarianism. And utility is not about a predefined right answer. Utility is about what works, and that what will work this season may not work next season. And that you might think in your mind, well, pyramids have camels, because every time I see a pyramid, I see a camel. Therefore, wherever there are camels, we're going to find pyramids. And the truth of the matter is, not one single camel was alive in what we call the Great Egyptian Dynasty. There were no camels there. No camels. None. But in our mind, we've been rewarded enough to regurgitate that those two things go together. We insist they go together, and we can't even fathom an idea that they wouldn't because we lack this utilitarian view. The truth is what works. The truth is not in a vault, and that you unlock it, and there's someone who holds the key to that vault, and you're going to ask them permission to translate that truth for you, Invictus, but that you decrypt that truth yourself. But decrypting that truth isn't even something esoteric. It's insoteric. It's decrypted through its ability to serve you. And this concept of things serving us is beyond the fathomability of growing up under an artificial intelligence, of growing up in this grand scheme, because we are not here to be served. We are here to stop breaking things. That's the thinking that goes into this modern thought. This modern thought has been sort of amalgamated. If you really wanted to pull it apart, if you look at our concept of the devil, if you looked at our concept of Satan, you'd really see that we've created a mythology in living person right here, right now. And it certainly has elements from the Bible in it. But most of the elements that we fear actually come from Dante. They come from stories. They come from poets like Virgil. And that the origin stories of Rome, the origin stories of Greece, which back then were admittedly, we don't know, that Romulus, that the Aeneid, these people writing the history of Rome and Greece were open about the truth that they didn't know. The Aeneid is a history of Greece. It's a history. And on page 1, it tells you, okay, it doesn't actually say it's on page 1, but it explains that we needed a history, and so we wrote one. That we as a society, as a state, needed to come up with a story because there are people who need that context to find shelter. And if we do not give them a context, they will not do well. That they will bash their heads so much running through this hall of mirrors that it will become an unsafe place. And you, as government, which is an idea of fixing things, it's the same kind of utility, would want to administer some sort of safety rope, some sort of technology that would stop these people from going berserk in a room full of glass. That every time someone goes berserk like that, everyone else freaks out. It causes a stampede, and it fucks shit up. And you start to realize that that context becomes coagulated in your genes. That you entangle, check this out, you fucking entangle with that mythology. You find solace from it. You find a belief, you find a nugget. And we try and distinguish those things now. We try and say, well, there's religion and there's science, but really all of these things are nuggets. That we find utilitarian shelter in these little nuggets, and we create homes inside of them. And the hermit crab's most vulnerable part are his ass cheeks. And the first thing that hermit crab does when he goes up for a new shell, he runs in there, he sticks his ass in first. He's like, oh, get in there, get in there. Because that context gives him safety. And once he's inside that context, you don't see that hermit crab's ass. You see a bony, hard shell that cannot be penetrated. And pincers. Arr, arr. And you see his model. You see how he needs the world. And you and I would be wrong to tell the hermit crab, that's not natural. That shell wasn't yours, and you're completely being unnatural. That really your true nature is to wander around with your ass sticking out. That you telling that to the hermit crab without being a hermit crab is basically you kind of being a psychopath. And there's a reason for you to do that. There's a reason for this need to fix, for this need to save, because we want to find our own context. That I was just as vulnerable and guilty as Tracy and Steve because of my own need of context. That I wanted the world of John Hughes of Pretty in Pink to be true. That I wanted that concept to be real because I could stick my bare hermit ass into that shell and survive. And I could make it through a few more waves. And you start to, if you have the electricity for it, the hermit crab will see his own reflection. And he will go, you know, man, I stuck my ass in this shell when I was like 2. Because that squid scared the shit out of me. That little octopus dude, man, that scared the fuck out of me. And I win the shell, And I've been living my entire life here. And the castigation might make you tell yourself that that was wrong. And then when you start to tell yourself that's wrong, you're going to enter this whole other context where you're just like, oh, I've completely let myself down and my family and my whole existence here in the world. And that even that has utility. That even the emotional roller coasters that you ride yourself on have their utility. And this is, I think, part of our largest blind spot that we have in the world is our blindness to our own need to emotionally torture the fuck out of ourselves. That there is a utility to this, that we need to do this. And when you start to unwrap why you're doing that and how it's happening and as it's happening, the fantasy around it begins to detangle. And that is the biggest clue of all, because the fantasy is the entanglement. Think about it. That the way that you entangle quantumly with other objects is to fantasize about them. That the plasma of fantasy itself is the tiny fingers from your essence stretching and wrapping themselves around the nooks and crannies of this ideal, of this notion, of this cosmology, of this politique, of this intelligence, of this environment. That you entangle with these things, but it's not even conscious. And some of you might want to say, well, I'm not going to fucking entangle with shit. I'm going to go home and sterilize the fuck out of myself. And so you will be entangling with cleansers. We wash our hands to feel something. The only time you can feel the word clean, the substance clean, the rock of clean, can only be felt by washing your hands. And that is a special kind of reality, isn't it? That there's a zipper in this world, and that this world has to first be dirty, and that you have the power as an alchemist to wash your hands and unzip this dirty world and stick your hands inside and feel clean. You're feeling the clean. You're feeling the dimension of the clean. And if you start to look at the world this way through this kind of animism, oh, fuck. Things start. Actually, I'm not even going to say start. Things that were always snapping, things that were always sparkling at just the right time, will simply begin to reveal themselves. Why? Because the context from that hermit shell is blocking your view. And that you, by able to see your own reflection, starts to wonder what your ass is missing. That there is a special kind of breeze that hits your rectum when you're naked. That special kind of air is its own entanglement. Because it's the entanglement from feeling confident, from feeling invincible. We measure, in an artificial intelligence world, we would measure invincibleness by one who is hypothetically incapable of suffering damage from fire, theft, blah, blah, blah. We have that. We call it insurance. That we sell this invincible feeling just like you would sell soap to open a zipper and reach into the dimension of clean. So too do we do that with invincible. But the true nature of being invincible would not actually be impermeable to suffering damage. That the true meaning of invincible, much like intelligence is not wisdom, so too is invincible not the inability to suffer damage. Because to be truly invincible would be to be immune from damage, not to be damage-free. But to be immune. Hang on a second. My camera quit. You guys probably know that, though, because you can see this. There, it's back. I think it's back. Let's see. Sorry about that. There. No, dang. What am I doing? Am I touching a wire? I don't think I am. I don't think I'm touching a wire. I think this is something else doing this. I wonder if I can... Sorry about that. I get a feeling that's just going to happen again. I need to buy a new camera, and I don't want to because I am quantumly entangled to this one. I spent money on this one. I love this one. It's great. It's actually not even the camera. I think it's the cord. But this is all part of it. I have a magical connection to this camera. The lens and I have been through a lot. We have quantumly entangled together. So even though, intelligence-wise, it's not actually serving me, my animism is. My attachment to these lenses, to this EF lens, is entangled in that way. I feel stronger as a result. You are... Okay. As long as it sounds good, I'll just keep talking. So Melanie, let me know. As long as it sounds good, if it goes out, I'll just keep doing it. Great. Now, Stairway from Heaven. Oh. So, like 3 years ago, gosh, I especially can't show you now. 3 years ago, I began construction on a project in my house. I had a big, thick metal spiral staircase that connected my upstairs to my downstairs. Very heavy piece of solid steel. Welded, but it's like all one piece with the banister. And I took that out. Because the spiral staircase was not serving my dogs. My dogs would not walk down that stairs. Wouldn't do it. You can go outside and go down, but my dogs, that was just way too much thinking for them. That they would rather sit at the top of the stairs and whine because I was downstairs. So, me being the person I am, 3 years ago I decided I will eliminate this staircase and produce a real staircase, a dog-friendly staircase. And I've begun that project. I started that. I told myself the intelligence of this is that this is what's going to happen and I'm going to do this and it's going to be no problem again. That was 3 years ago. I started on that. I had a wife, a cat, 2 dogs. I finished the staircase yesterday. I finished it. Like the molding's done. It's painted. The treads have not been stained yet, but that's because I'm waiting for the first coat of the molding to dry. Then all I have to do is stain the treads. But the treads are there. My dog even walked down the stairs on his own accord yesterday. It's a very touching moment for me to see my dog come down there. I have 1 dog left. Wife's gone. Cat's gone. Other dog's gone. I miss the fuck out of that other cat and dog. I mean, holy jeez. And the amount of time that I've been walking past this giant hole has been like a blur, but it's been like 3 years. Now, it hasn't just been a hole. I built a plywood staircase. I built the stringers for it. This staircase is a little bit tricky because it has a 60-degree angle. I'm not saying it's hard. I'm just saying for me, someone who doesn't do carpentry regularly, it's just a little bit tricky is all. You had to make 2 landings, like 2 30-degree landings, and then 13 steps in between. The stringers, I wanted them to be tied in the wall so you didn't see a separate frame, so I had to pull down some drywall to access the frames of the house to put the staircase in. And I'm making excuses. It took me 3 years. It took me fucking 3 years. Like a month into that, divorce was happening. Like a few months later, the cat died, and like a year later, my dog died, and the staircase still wasn't done. And I gotta tell you that before all that happened, my downstairs flooded too. I had a plumbing leak, washer supply hose burst, and it flooded the entire downstairs. Downstairs is like a 700 square feet, bathroom, laundry room, and like a guest bedroom. All that was just ruined. And which, it's no big deal. You have a house, you have insurance, stuff like that. I didn't actually even live down there, so that actually didn't really affect me. But it was such a huge loss that I just sort of stopped going downstairs. My dogs wouldn't go down anyway because of the spiral staircase. I really only used it for company, and frankly, I don't have that many friends. So having the guest room itself wasn't even necessarily something that was helping me. It was just this place where things break and water bursts, and the bathroom had some issues. I knew when I bought the house. I don't want to bore you about the house. What I'm trying to get at is that as I'm fixing this staircase, so last week I didn't mean to stop streaming. What happened was my dishwasher stopped working. I thought that in 2 hours I could replace the dishwasher. The dishwasher was no problem to replace. However, by replacing the dishwasher, dishwashers touch electricity and plumbing. And although I'm pretty versed in both of those, the plumbing connected to a pipe that was inside the wall that led to a ceiling that was downstairs. Next thing you know, it's like Sunday, and I realized that I've just rerouted most of my plumbing downstairs to fix this other problem that was caught anyway. And so what I thought was going to be 2 hours turned into like 7 days of work. And in the middle of that, I noticed that the plywood stairs were still there. And there's this ties into the animism, because when we go through things, we map what we're feeling to the physical world. We entangle these events in the tangible tchotchkes of our life. We imbue our mantle with the pain of life. We steep it in this sort of mixture. And you don't know this, but most of your house is sort of an idolatry to pain. Most of us need these pain temples in our house because no one else sees our pain. We don't have a society where we necessarily share pain. Certainly you will connect with someone. In fact, most of your connections with someone is a trauma bond, because you recognize the pain in me sees the pain in you, and we are instantly bonded. That's very, very true. It's beautiful. But society itself, the social structure, doesn't really allow that communion, that altar of pain. And so we still create them, but we have created this grease that we smear on top of them so that we can still showcase our pain as an altar, but never actually acknowledge it publicly. And we call these things renovations. We call these things, well, it's just a mess. Or it's just a clusterfuck. That was a good one. Don't open that door. It's a clusterfuck in there. It really means don't open that door. I don't want you to be embarrassed by my pain. And I'm just guessing, but I would say a good bit of you are like, that sounds really, really silly. And I think that you seeing that as silly is just proof of what my point is that we as society have learned to grease over those things. Because I know this is true, because if you open a drawer that you haven't opened in years and you pick up something that you haven't seen in years, all of the memories of that object are played. They're brought to the desktop, they're displayed in preview mode, full screen. And you see them. And what makes that stop is you put that object away. Another way to stop that is to burn the object out. Like if you have something sacred, if you have a magical turtle shell that you found on the perfect day, just as the sun was setting, just as that gold of the leaves was reflecting off that beautiful, beautiful orange in the shell, that you take that home and you place that shell on your altar, and it is beaming for days, for weeks, for years. It will beam with the prana from that day. But you can drain that prana simply by leaving it on your shelf and allowing the essence of your day-to-day life, allow it to drain. It's much like buying a brand new flashlight, bringing it home, and turning it on and setting it on the counter. And that you're walking around living your life, even though the sun's out, even though the sun's glorious, the flashlight's still on. It's like that. And after, a few days, a few weeks, the flashlight will go off. It will no longer have that life. And the turtle shell is the same way. And this is actually why we have things like potlatch. That the Thunderbird tribe from Alaska would only show their sacred turtle shell on one day of the year. Why? Because they were saving the batteries. That flashlight meant a lot to them, and they were saving it. And that just like you do that with things that are sacred, actually, I'm going to take that back, because to say, and just like you do that, would be to imply these things are different. Sorry, I'm really confusing here, but just like you do that, to claim things are sacred, you do the same thing for things that cause you pain. I have a letter from the IRS in my office, and I could bring that to dinner, and I could present that on my plate in front of my friends, and we would all have a different connection and reaction to the plasma of that letter. That's the same kind of idol. Your credit card bills, your mortgage, these are the same kind of idols. They're sacred turtle shells. But because we live in a world where there's good, not evil, or whatever, right? Because of that, we will only recognize one and not the other. Can you make it? It's right behind you. Sorry guys, there's a squirrel. It's not Prometheus, it's actually one of the red squirrels just came up. I will see if I can get the camera back going for next time. That was pretty cool. This is why you have a hope chest. Isn't that what it's called? Like when a woman would get married, she would like take a chest with her, right? It has like an Afghan in it and shit like that. This is the same kind of things. That most of the furniture in our house is this pranic battery. And when you're looking at someone that puts plastic over their furniture, you're looking at someone who you may call deeply disturbed, which is fine. I would probably call them that. But only now am I starting to see that this is someone who just really understands the power of batteries. That they want that plastic on the furniture because they want the charge to be as strong as possible when people come over. I'm not saying this is right. I'm trying to say that, don't you see? Can't you see the animism here? Because this animism is all around you. The way we idolize our pain, the way we idolize our pleasure, our successes, all the camaraderie we feel, all the isolation we feel. That these contexts we crawl and stick our ass into and take our ass out of every single day are simply quantum entanglements that we reset from moment to moment. And that not one of them is the truth. Not one of them is the best of the best. That the truth is that for a while, that one shell really, really gave your ass some comfort. And so that's the only reason why you chose it. And that there's nothing wrong with that. And that not only is there nothing wrong with that, but if you can start to see how this animism works on the bad things in your life too, you can really, really, really start to leverage the other pedal. That your bike has two pedals. And you can get very far just by pumping your left foot. You can, the whole time. I should say right foot. Most of you guys are right-handed probably. But you can get by. You can ride most of the way to the pool you can ride just by pumping your right foot. And you don't pump your left foot because that would be evil. Because Satan lives in your left foot, but your right foot is good. And you've got this entangled idea about the context of everything. Because you're so afraid that you're not going to regurgitate what's considered intelligent. Not wise, but intelligent. People can live their entire lives inside that shell. They can live their entire lives on the surface and never ever once even see that Tracy dangling behind a robber. And that's fine. I don't have a more accurate picture of life because I've made it to 500 feet depth. I don't. And I might carry myself like that. I might even find shelter in that by going, oh man, it's just, I've swam so much deeper than all these people. I'm, high pressure certified diver, blah, 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 all that stuff. Because the truth is that whether you're deepest in the bowels of Sheol or whether you're in the highest part of the tree, that not one of those realities is more or less real than the other. Why? Because this is about utility. It's not about intelligence. It's not about righteousness. It's about utility. And when you look at this world where maybe 30% of us doubt what we've been told about the shape of the world, you're seeing how healthy humanity is. You're seeing that there are people out there that are simply immune to the intelligence around them because they know that the only way that they will ever survive by being alive is through the immersion in their own wisdom, finding the poetry of truth. Poetry is going to sting, it's going to burn, as much as it's going to soothe. That these words are tiny tumblers. And we speak this code to each other and decrypt our hearts to each other over dinner, over tea, over the phone, over a fucking live stream. Because something deeper is happening. That there's a quantum entanglement you might feel right now through me talking. And that my connection with this world might be so fragile that this connection could be all that's feeding me too. And there are times when I feel this way. I remember what it was like 2 years ago. I remember what it was like when I was 13. I remember all these times and how much I was either missing or using quantum entanglement for context to hide my ass. To find the intelligence in being artificial. That's why it just blows me away that we're creating artificial intelligence right now. And the only way to do that is to show a fucking robot 20 million pictures of stoplights and just keep bitch slapping it until it guesses right. That's all it takes. It's literally the definition of artificial intelligence right now. As I was repairing my stairs, it got really hard. And it's weird because the hard part was the stringers. I'm not even saying stringers are hard, but I'm saying lining 3 stringers up to where all the steps were congruent, but on this 3-tiered landing was probably the most technically difficult work for me. Measuring where to actually cut the hole in the floor upstairs, not cutting it too big, cutting it just right to where I won't have to rip out all the flooring that's upstairs. Finding a way to integrate the rafters, rerouting all the plumbing, all the electricity that required that so that my dog could walk downstairs. Actually, my 2 dogs, my cat, and my wife could walk downstairs. And I buried 3 of them. I mean, my wife didn't die, but fuck, man. During that burial, my steps were never repaired. And I think in a lot of ways, the plywood became that same kind of altar for me. And that every time I would go downstairs, I would descend into this pit of flooding, of failure, of damage. And it's in my house all the time. All the time. It's a constantly glowing like some piece of fucking kryptonite. And for 3 years, I couldn't even look at it. I didn't either. I'm going to tell you that I probably was telling myself, I never even told myself this. I just was numb as fuck. But we tell ourselves, oh, I'm not worthy of repairing that. But really, that's a salve. That's the grease we use. It's not that we don't think we're worthy. It's that we need those altars in our lives. Altar, A-L-T-A-R. Altar. We need these tabernacles of pain in our life. That we don't have a society that allows us to showcase these tchotchkes, that we need a shell that we can stick our ass in. And the first thing we do when we get up there is we mount our pain above the fireplace. We build families off this pain. Someone got mad at me on Twitter because I suggested that trauma was absolutely the ingredient to truth. And they were just like, how dare you? You're supporting the Satanist idea of the... And it's just like, no. No, I'm telling you that if you want truth, you're going to have to burn something very precious. You're going to have to destroy something very, very precious in exchange for that truth. And that what you're going to destroy is painful because of how precious it was to you. And if you want to know what that is, it's innocence. It's ignorance, innocence. These are the same essence. The white virgin, eyes closed, is completely annihilated. The Holy Virgin herself becomes the whore of Babylon the moment you find wisdom. And that you holding that wisdom is complete destruction of that innocence. And sometimes that fiery fucking spiky ball of kryptonite, this truth that you have, burns so fucking much you wish to fuck you could let go of it. God, you wish you could cover it up. No amount of grease seems to work. That green fucking sizzling glow just bubbles and gurgles its way through that grease, and it's kryptonite again. It's right the fuck there. And last week I wanted that gone. I wanted that shit out. I want it out because I want to build something. I want to do something. I want to do something cool with my life. I want to feel like I'm accomplishing something. We all do. And I knew that there's no fucking way I was going to make it past second gear if I didn't go downstairs and finish the fucking stairs. Like, solve this altar. Ah, man, I don't mean to get... Excuse me. So I have patrons, and wow, you guys keep me online. Fuck, man. Like, even Flattoberfest. I think I was the only speaker not invited to Flattoberfest. I'm fucking hurt. God, I'm like an hour away. Like an hour away. I wasn't even like invited to buy a ticket. And that's one of the idols. And when I noticed that was happening, I really started thinking about this animism stuff. I really started thinking about this whole, all this feelings. Because we're battling this massive, massive thing that's happening right now. And you would think if anyone was going to stick together, it would be us. It would be like this zetetic, sensational society that we have formed, that we would stick together above all else. But just like in QAnon, it doesn't work that way. Because our friendships are forged by our context most of the time, not by our pain. That we have that same motive of reality. That I found shelter in my context, you found shelter in your context, we're the same. And you can build a nice, creamy society off of that. But it breaks down the moment pain is introduced. The whole thing falls apart. And the most painful things a hermit is going to go through is the idea that their shell isn't what it's cracked up to be. That they are growing too big for that shell. And that they need to find a different way. And that no matter what they do, this place isn't going to fit. And most of these hermits will do what most of us do, which is ignore it. We ignore where this is at. We ignore how it doesn't serve us, all that stuff. And what we're really doing is we're idolizing that altar even more. We're making it stronger. I'm getting too esoteric here because I'm trying to say that as I started to build those steps, I got so fucking sad. Like fucking sad as I'm repairing them. And not once did I have the wisdom to really see all of the prana. I mean, eventually I did, but like as I was building them at first, I didn't have the wisdom to see all the prana that had been built into each of those steps over time. That the pain of loss, the losing my career even over this. Because as I started to find that this contextual hermit shell didn't work, all of my amazing fucking clients found me unbearable. They could not handle being around them. One of those clients was my wife. One of those clients was most of my AI business in California. That I could not stay in that fucking shell. And the pain of having to come out of it is a 3-year grueling process, and every single step can't be phoned in. That every one of those steps had to be completed. I couldn't just throw a piece of plywood over it. The plywood had a gap because when I finished it, I had no money, and I had one piece of plywood left over from an art project. And I was like, I will turn this into my steps. And I noticed that they were half an inch too short on either side. And I was like, that's okay. And I did that. And so for the next 3 years, every single piece of hair, birdseed, leaves, dust, dirt would collect in those corners of those steps. And it wasn't just on the sides, it was in the front of the step. It was just this really bad thing. I think the only thing that would have made it worse was like gummy bears. Like if gummy bears would have been in those cracks, that would have been worse. It didn't have the color of the gummy bear, you know? It was all that same gray. And that walking up that altar, those 13 steps over and over and over again, was just simply reinforcing that pain, but not acknowledging it, not finding the wisdom in it. And that as my ass came out of the hermit shell of trying to fit into normal society, I ran as quickly as I could. And I started to look at the truth of the world and what was happening. And then I found QAnon, and I stuck my ass in that shell. And maybe 3 months later, it was like, dude, you're not going to fit in here. In fact, people are really mad that you're hanging out over here in the QAnon shells. And I pulled my ass out of there. Why? Because of Epstein Island. Because I knew it was bullshit what they were saying about Epstein Island. Because it took that much for me to finally see, holy fuck, I was just here for the context. I was just here because it was making me feel that I had the truth because I was further away from the last lie I was told. This is what I was opening up with, that our reactions are reactions to reactions to reactions. And I didn't want to leave QAnon. But as Amazing Polly and all the others were just like, this guy's a fucking evil motherfucker, da 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 da, I realized you had to. You had to get out. And I was just writing books then. I remember how much courage it took for me to write a chapter about flat Earth. This was like 2.5 years ago. It was not popular to talk about that shit. And I wrote a chapter about that, and I was terrified of people reading that. It was literally scaring the shit out of me to even think that people would even read that. And that was me sticking my hermit ass into another shell, in another context. And that pain didn't really bond me with people in the flat Earth community, because I don't share the same kind of context when it comes... I'm sorry, Mel. God. Cursor's moved. Now that it's almost over. Sorry. Are there people still watching? Remember Gene Secure? Oh, okay, cool. I don't think that I'm a flat earther. And it bums me out because I really love that community. But like with Flattoberfest was like really fitting because it kind of showed me that. It made me realize, oh wait, this isn't where I belong. Because I actually don't think that flat Earth has it all solved. In fact, I've noticed that in many of your flat earthers, please, if this offends you, I just want you to know I'm not trying. I mean, be offended, because I think that's important. You need the idol, and people fucking get offended by me and use that to springboard out of their shells all the time. So I know that's an important part of this. I don't want a fire where people always have to stay. I don't want you to feel obligated to stay here. You don't. There's room for you if you do, but I'm just saying it's okay. But it feels like that I've found, because of this Flattoberfest thing, it feels like I actually found the difference between flat Earth and Zeteticism. And I'm not trying to say that if you're a flat earther you have to believe this, but I will tell you that inside the flat Earth community there is a huge strong belief that there is a Luciferian evil agenda that's out to get you, that there is a boogeyman trying to destroy you, and that you are an innocent in all of this, that you are an innocent, pure, light, innocent victim, a child of God surrounded by a world of evil, satanic, Luciferian, blah, blah, blah. And that's exactly what QAnon was saying. James, it's underneath that structure, 6 levels down, buried in concrete. It's where they were eating child's faces off. And if you doubt that, well, you clearly are a pedophile too. It's the exact same kind of system. It looks like that most of flat Earth is the belief that our cosmology is not what we've been told, which is great, but it also has this extra belief that says, and it's because an evil force is fooling you. Zeteticism says the world is not what you've been told, and that the experience of figuring that out is literally the power of cosmology. That your experience here, your utilitarian use of this, the utility of your cosmology, is going to be more of a factor than this notion that you have that you and only you have seen the entire truth behind this curtain, and that you hold that peace, that is a savior technology, and it would be no different than going to the artificial intelligence camp and simply regurgitating. But you're not regurgitating that the world's a ball, you're regurgitating that the world's flat. But I don't know how the sun works. What I'm telling you is the perspective versus isometric concept of this world that if you're in 3D programming, there's a way of viewing things via perspective and orthographic. And that orthographic is almost like a CAD drawing, where you don't see perspectives of things, you simply see their shapes. And that these two concepts that we have are much deeper than we think. That these concepts, orthographic is the same as hypothetical. Perspective is the same as utilitarian. Geometry is hypothetical and orthographic. We are going to tell ourselves that one's real and one's not. But the truth of the matter is, your left brain and your right brain focus in on the hypothetical versus the perspective, just like 3D does. That you will take an orthographic concept of the world and project it, much like a sun, into the perspective of the world. That no one finds it truly eye-opening until they start to see that the sun itself has a context. The sun is not a spatial location. In fact, I can prove that it's not a spatial location because of how different it is for different viewers, but that the sun itself has something unique in that every single person who has a conscious witness experiences the sun, experiences the stars, and that the percentage of experience that you can experience something probably has more to do with what our reality is than any sort of artificial story that we've learned to regurgitate over time, or any reaction that we have to an artificial story that's been regurgitated over time. That beyond these two things, that beyond what we are pretending is the truth today, which is a reaction to a reaction to a reaction to a reaction, that there is a spatial context to the sun and moon itself, that they are always within your purview because they occupy a certain hemisphere of consciousness, not physicality, but consciousness. And that we can't, I don't have a shelter yet, a context to even talk about these things. I probably worked 2 or 3 months on my Eye of Ra presentation last year for Flattoberfest. I can't believe how much work I put into that thing. It was so much work. And it was blowing me away because I realized no one is thinking about these things. That the conscious 0 point centers that all of us are, the dimensions have nothing to do with time and space. That each of us have dimensions that we create on the spot. That clean is a fucking dimension. That you bring the dimension of clean into your home by scrubbing it, by applying it. That the reason why we paint our walls may not necessarily be because we want to apply color. That the reason why a room feels clean when it's painted is because all of the tangible quantum entanglements have been covered by a force field of intention that you and I called pigments and paint. And that these things like fashion, these things like how we decorate our home, how we carry ourselves, the clothes that we wear, are all quantum entanglements showcasing our connection and discombobulation with different levels of the world, because we have different utilities. We find different utilities in the ocean. That we are creatures living in an ocean that's unfathomable. There are creatures around us, human beings, that have concepts that we have never, ever seen. And the reason why we've not seen them is simply because of the context of our shell preventing us from looking, preventing us from seeing anything outside of the wings of our home, of our utility, of our idols that we've created. To wrap this up, as I'm cleaning these stairs, as I'm fixing these stairs, as I'm cutting the treads and routing the shit and all the other stuff, it's like really, really painful. And at first I'm like, oh, it's because of Flattoberfest, that's all. Or, oh, it's because of this, that's all. Or, oh, it's because of that, that's all. But no. It's because for the last 3 years, I've kept this idol of pain. And all my losses I've put into this idol, all the things that I've lost, all the things that I've gained even, that it was a scepter, a charging station for this pain. And it's such a large hole in the house, it's such a big object that the prana from those things just gleams. And at night when the lights are off, if you could truly see energy, you'd see this yellow and green glow. This ebby steam, like rising from the wetlands of these steps, from this tragedy of flooding, and all of these things, as one hermit just tries to find another context to exist in. None of these things are true. And if I would have been sold on things being true, I simply would have said, well, yeah, I'm in fucking pain, and that's the way it is, and these things I was wrong about, and these things I was right about. But that's not actually what happens. That there's a motor at work. And each time I got a step closer, first step, second step, first 4 steps weren't that bad once I started. 5th step was the first 30-degree landing angle. Next step was the next 30-degree angle. And as I continued to rise up these steps, I started to notice that I was literally had an opportunity to animize depression, to animize sadness, to animize the loss of connection, to watch this world so full of lies, and watching these hermit crabs that agree choke each other out because they want to be right. They want to have the right regurgitation. It makes me sad as fuck to see that kind of stuff. But I understand why it happens. It's all of us dealing with our context. I think 5 or 6 years ago, I probably would have... Actually, I don't think I would have done that, but I'm trying to say that I really think that I see why certain people turn to medications or psychotherapy or drugs or ignorance or numbing themselves or pretending that taking fucking psychedelic mushrooms every day because it's the word micro in it. All the things that we tell ourselves to deal with the context of these things. That deep down you're missing an opportunity to animize something. And no matter how sad I got, I kept saying, the reason why this is sad is because you're repairing these steps. And this third step, the truth is, James, is that every time you stepped on this piece of plywood, you were fucking sad. And now you're pulling that piece of plywood out, and you're sad about that. Why? Because I wasn't even witnessing myself as that was happening. I wasn't. I was sold that, well, if I could just get these steps fixed, it would be already. Or if I could just get invited to Flattoberfest, or, whatever the shit it is that we create. That deep down below it is this idol. And that we idolize our pain because we don't have a society that really makes that okay. There's not really a way to do that otherwise. I want you to see this because I want you to look around your house and see if this is true. And I'd love for you to tell me that it is or it isn't. I want to know if you find this true. Because I tell you, the reason why I think certain things are hard is probably more about the emotional attachments that we have to that thing versus actually doing it. That it seems impossible to throw away that dresser or that nightstand, and you can't really figure out why. You don't really like it. You think, well, it's because it'd be so hard to take it to the street or to take it to the recycle, whatever. if you stop and think about it, you might find that actually that's not it at all. That actually the physical work of physically taking my saw, bringing it up to level 2, setting up the dado blade where I could cut a nice clean channel for my mortise and tendons and all, shit like that. Tongue and groove, I should say. That actually is not hard at all. In fact, that's fun. But it's letting go of the pain. That's the hard part. And as I was repairing those steps, I kept noticing that, why is it hard to let go? Shouldn't pain be easy to let go of? Shouldn't this be super easy to let go of? Wouldn't that be like the very, very first thing I do? And then it just fucking hit me like a board to the face. You can't let go of pain until it's witnessed. And walking around with your pain on your shoulder doesn't work. In fact, a lot of us think that, well, if I show my pain to someone else, it'll be witnessed. But actually, it's not. When you show it to someone else, if that someone else is really good, they're just showing it to you, and you're seeing it. That the reason why you're quantumly entangled with shit that you can't let go of is because you never fucking looked at it. And I don't blame you. Who the fuck wants to look at that? God damn. Who wants to look at your ass when it's all comfy? It's been in a shell its whole time. Who wants to look at that, right? But it's beautiful. Your white, pimpled hermit ass is beautiful. And until we learn the power of our own witness, we're going to have to constantly carry around this kind of shit, I think. That is just part of the matrix of why we're here. And that's not bad. In fact, I would say that if we were to really open up to our animism more, we'd find it's better. That our world is better in this context, not worse. Anyway, I've gone way over today. But I appreciate you guys. And I'm hoping to be back on schedule now. I gained my downstairs now, and I moved my. We're starting a movie. If you guys are on Patreon, we've written a screenplay, and with Unreal Engine 5 out now, guys, the nanite filter in there allows me to show you an LOD field of detail as you zoom in on certain objects. That's just fucking stunning. It's amazing. And my screenplay, tentatively called The Hidden Hand or The Man from Katua, it's about giants in Amuraka and Sasquatch and Rockefeller, and it's a really cool story. I'm telling you, it's a really cool story. And I've only written it as a screenplay. It's not in any of my books. You'd only see it if you were on Patreon. But I want to turn that downstairs into that movie set and actually see if we can animate that. I want to animate just the first 2 scenes because this is going to be a hard job. There's a lot to do when you're making this stuff. But the first 2 scenes are simplistic enough. Anyway, if you want to check that out, check me out on Patreon. If you're on Patreon and you were like, where the fuck is James? It's been a week and a half. Why am I paying for this shit? I just want you to know, man, I feel you. I've been feeling that too. I've been like, God, James, what the fuck's wrong with you? And what was wrong with me is I have to fix these steps. And I did. They're beautiful. And when my dog walked down those stairs, oh, God, that was beautiful. Did it by himself. It was awesome. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for being here.